Hello and welcome to this week's sermon. I am so glad that you have joined me. Starting a brand new series, I'm excited that you are here with me. The new series is called Overwhelmed. Let me begin by asking you a question. Have you ever been on a long trip and needed a rest stop? Rest stops are amazing. I think the government did well probably 70 years ago when they started that concept. When you're driving and you're weary and tired and you need to take intermission, rest stops are amazing. You pull over, you stop, you can get something to drink, there are picnic tables, you can take the dog for a walk, you can even take a short nap in most of those. Unfortunately, in our nation, a lot of rest stops are closing. But the good news is there are a lot more Buc-ee's opening up. I just discovered them a couple of months ago. It was amazing. We stopped for gas, we stretched our legs, we got ice cream and barbecue, and did Christmas shopping, all in one stop. We all need a rest stop occasionally. I may be talking to some who are tired and weary. Have you been weary within the last year? I think with the coronavirus epidemic, we've all been tired and we've all been weary. Maybe you've been weary in the last week. Maybe you're weary today, even as I speak to you. Sometimes we feel like one of those birthday helium balloons. Have you ever seen those? They do really well for a few days, and then by 3 or 4 days, they're just about a foot off the ground and they have lost a lot of air. Maybe you can identify and maybe you feel a little bit like that. You're a little fatigued. And 2 weeks ago I was very fatigued. We helped my daughter and son-in-law move from one part of Orlando to another part. And my brother-in-law Roger and I, we were so fatigued at the end of the day. I started to put on the side of the big 30-foot U-Haul truck 2 70-year-olds and a truck. We're slow, but we are cheap. We were so fatigued after 14 hours of working, but can I tell you, there are all kinds of fatigue. There is emotional fatigue, relational fatigue, there's financial fatigue, there's spiritual fatigue. And when you need what you need for fatigue, for physical fatigue, is you need sleep. And what you need for the other kinds of emotional fatigue, you need rest. Now, there is a difference. You can sleep all night and wake up and still feel very tired. And that's what we're going to talk about. Jesus not only describes the problem of fatigue and weariness, but He provides us with the solution. So if you're here and you're tired, you're just tired of fighting with your marriage. You're tired of fighting with your finances. You're under such financial pressure. You got so many bills that are unpaid. You don't even want to answer the telephone for fear that it is a bill collector. And you're exasperated. You're at the end of your rope. You are overwhelmed. Maybe you're like that great old theologian that I used to watch when I was a child, Popeye the Sailor Man. When he got to a point, he would say, "That's all I can stands, and I can't stands no more." And let me tell you, we need more than a can of spinach to help us. In fact, when we feel overwhelmed, or maybe we feel overloaded, or overworked, or overcommitted, or overextended, or over anxious, we need the help of the Lord. So we're going to look at a passage in Matthew chapter 11, the very first gospel in the New Testament. While you're finding Matthew, let me tell you about a guy I heard that I could identify with. The guy bought a used truck, and he started a business of just hauling things for other people. And one day he was hauling some chickens. As he was hauling these chickens in North Georgia, there was a car passing him, literally tailgating him, wanting to find a place to pass. But the problem was, this truck driver, every mile or so, would stop, get out of his truck, take out a big bat, and beat the side of his truck. He'd get back in the truck, drive another mile, stop again, get out, beat the truck with the bat. He did that finally about 8 or 9 times. The guy following him was so curious and so puzzled. He pulled over beside the truck driver, motioned for him to pull over. When he pulled over, He walked up to him and said, "What in the world is going on? Why are you taking a bat out and banging the side of your truck? You're scaring those chickens to death." The man looked at him rather exasperated and said, "Well, you have to understand, I only have a half-ton truck, but I have a ton of chickens that I'm hauling, so I have to keep half of them in the air all the time." Well, sometimes we're so overwhelmed and we have so many problems, we have to keep a lot of those flying in the air, or the weight of it will literally be overwhelming to us. You know, overwhelming people live in a deficit, an emotional deficit, a relational deficit, a spiritual deficit, a financial deficit. It's kind of like if you've ever overdrawn at the bank. That'll produce incredible stress. Well, some people are overdrawn in their relationships, in their marriage, overdrawn in their parenting, overdrawn financially, and it is literally overwhelming. When you are so overwhelmed, you need words that begin with the prefix re. When you're overwhelmed, you got to be restored. You need to relax. You need to revive, replenish, recharge, renew, and refresh. And the good news is Jesus offers all of those things. Matthew chapter 11:28. Listen to what Jesus says. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, learn of me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." When you're overwhelmed, the first thing you do, according to Jesus, is look to me. So you look to Jesus. He says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened." He didn't say come to church. He didn't say come to religion. He didn't say come to your pastor. He didn't say come to seminary. He said, "Come to me. Come to me. Take my yoke up on you." The problem is people know they need rest, but they're looking for rest in all the wrong places. Some people try partying their problems away. Some people try drinking and drugging their problems away. Some people hop from bed to bed for a temporary pleasure to try to alleviate the long-term stress and pain of just living and pressure of just living. No, Jesus said, you need to look to me. The second thing He says is, not only should we look to Jesus, but we need to live for Jesus. He says in verse 29, "Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am gentle and humble in heart." Now I have a yoke, a 100-pound yoke in my office in front of my desk. And often when people come into my office for the first time, they go, "What is that?" I say it's a yoke, and most people are not familiar. So let me show you a picture of this yoke. It was too heavy for me to bring it in. This is a picture of the yoke. Let me show you what it does. Basically, a yoke is used by the farmer. A farmer will put it around the neck and the shoulders of his oxen, and he will hook up a harness to it and reins to it, and he will pull a plow or a wagon. Usually those oxen can pull a very heavy load. But that farmer, when putting a yoke on the oxen or the donkey, can control and guide that animal. See, the yoke is a symbol of submission. Now immediately when Jesus says, "Take up your yoke, submit to me," in the natural we immediately go, no. We don't want to do that. We have two problems with that. Number one, we don't want anybody telling us what to do. We want to do what we want to do, go where we want to go. We want to be what we want to be without any influence of anybody else. The second problem we have with the yoke is, wait, you want me to carry your burden? No, you carry your own weight. I've got enough weight on my shoulder. Now, before you dismiss what Jesus said, look at the two things He says about a yoke and about a burden. Verse 30. He says, "My yoke, it's easy. My burden, it's light." Now, that word easy literally means it's good, it's best. It's perfectly suited for its purpose. Oftentimes a farmer would go to a carpenter and have a carpenter custom make a yoke just for his oxen. See, because if he didn't, it wasn't a one-size-fits-all. If the harness did not fit properly, if the yoke did not fit properly, it would blister and chafe that animal. But he said, no, not my yoke. You'll hardly even notice it's on your back, because I'm in that yoke with you, pulling with you. He says also, it is light. Now, a lot of people would reject this whole idea, go, no, I want to be free. No, freedom is not being out of control and having no weight on your shoulders. Freedom is being under the right kind of control. It's saying yes to Jesus. In war, peace never comes till one side surrenders to the other. That's why we often talk about when you're a follower of Christ, you surrender to Christ. William Booth, the founder of the Salvation Army, once said this. Somebody said, no matter how difficult the circumstances, no matter what the financial pressure of our organization, you always seem to be so at rest. You're always so calm, cool, and collected. Why is that? He answered, because I've never said no to the Lord. Have you ever said no to the Lord? Well, let me tell you something about the Lord. He is not a taskmaster. He is a tender master. He will not beat you, but He will lead you. So you not only look to Jesus, let me tell you one other thing. If you're overwhelmed, you learn from Jesus. He says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and then you will find rest for your souls. Now, here's what I want to encourage you to do today. The Lord sent me here to talk to you today, to encourage you to enroll in the Jesus School. Follow Jesus. The interesting thing is, He's not only your teacher, He's the entire curriculum. He's the whole subject of what you are going to study. If you're tired today, I want to encourage you. Come to Jesus. Look to Jesus. Learn from Jesus. I read an interesting story the other day about a city named San Juan Capistrano. Capistrano is a little island off of California, and they're very famous for tourists. If you want to take a second honeymoon or take a vacation where you've never been, let me suggest you try that. It's a marvelous little island. The thing that made the island famous are these little cliff sparrows. Excuse me, let me start over. The thing that made this little resort island popular are these little cliff swallows. These little swallows are little birds. I want to show you a picture of them. They're just gorgeous little birds, but the thing that makes them amazing is every year in the winter, just before winter, they fly and migrate 6,000 miles to Argentina. Then in March, almost like they've marked their calendar, in March they come back to Capistrano. 6,000 miles. There's a lot of interesting facts about those sparrows. There's also some interesting legends. And I don't know if this is a legend or a fact, but I read one place where what these sparrows would do when they're flying over the ocean and they get tired, that they carry a little twig, a large twig in their mouth, big enough to carry their own weight. And when they get tired, they just drop that twig in the water and they rest on it. Now, I don't know if that's fact or whether that's actually reality, but here's what I do know. We are traveling many times over rough water. Sometimes it's smooth sailing, sometimes it's rough waters. Can I suggest that when we have taken up our cross and we're following Jesus and we're carrying that cross, you can throw that cross on the water. It will always float. You can stand on it, you can rest, and you can get resuscitated so that you can finish your journey. Whenever I invite people to come to Christ, sometimes I hear people say, well, it's just so hard to be a Christian. Now, can I suggest to you, comparatively speaking, it's harder not to be a Christian. I mean, you think about it for a while. The yoke the world will put on you, that Hollywood will put on you, that political correctness will put on you, that Washington, D.C. will put on you, is much harder than that light yoke that Jesus will put on you. You think it's hard? to be a follower of Christ? Compare that to drug addiction, sexual addiction, alcohol addiction, money addiction, gambling addiction. It's much easier to be addicted to Jesus, to always live with Him, be with Him, look to Him, learn from Him. I promise you, that's easier. The Bible says the way of the transgressor is hard. So what I want to invite you to do is cast all your burdens, all the weight on Jesus today. You go, man, that yoke is so heavy today, Pastor. Well, let me tell you, He's in that yoke with you. And He's not just pulling His share of the load, He's pulling most of the load. God love you. God bless you. I am praying God's choice blessings on you, that you will truly find rest. You need a rest stop? Stop by Jesus today. He will give you rest. He will give you peace that passes all understanding. Until I see you next time, I pray the Lord bless and keep you. God bless you.